Hi class, welcome to the decision-making module. There's a few concepts that we would have covered in class that I want to clarify. First of all, I want to talk about decision-making processes that you've probably been using in your teams. And the first one is consensus decision-making, and kind of an operational definition for it is I had an opportunity to be heard and to influence the team. In other words, I had a voice. And even though it's not my first choice, I'll commit. So I feel 70% comfortable with the team's decision. I'll commit to do my part. So that's a good working definition. Advantages of consensus decision making is when you need cooperation to make the solution work. In other words, each person has a contribution to make, and it has to be right. You need to do consensus decision making. So commitment is critical. A couple of disadvantages is it takes more time to use consensus decision making. And Americans tend to be impatient with time. Now, impatience with time is a defining characteristic of Americans, by the way. I just think we go through fast food drive-through and we get to the window and they say, pull over and wait. And we get mad. We want the food right away. Groupthink can be another disadvantage if you don't take the time to check out the dissenting voice. Every time in government that we've used groupthink has turned out to be a disaster. The textbook examples are the Kennedy administration, the Bay of Pigs. There was two generals said it'd be a bad idea to attack Cuba, and we did it anyway, and it turned out to be a bad idea. Later in 1986, the space shuttle Challenger that exploded on takeoff. And then we find out later that there were engineers, NASA engineers, who said there were O-rings that could be a problem in certain types of weather. Turns out they were. More recently, in 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia that kind of disintegrated on re-entry. And then we find out there were engineers saying there were problems with heat shields, and there were. So the dissenting voice should have been checked out. Autocratic decision-making, sometimes the leader with the most authority makes a decision, or the person with the most expertise. When is this good? This certainly in time of emergency. You know, I had an online student who worked in personnel for a company that was located towards the top of a tower in the World Trade Center. And she told this story about 2001. She said that their company had a policy that if a person with authority called for an evacuation, everyone had to evacuate. They had to clear the building. They had assigned places to go, and they would report to a team leader. They would call around to each team leader and verify that all personnel had checked in. Then they would release them for re-entry back in the building. And there was no reversing this policy. So when the airplane hit the first tower, person of authority called for evacuation, and employees started to evacuate. When they got outside into the hallways, the building facility management told them, they said, look, this is a false alarm. The problem's in the other building, not this building. Well, they ignored him because they had a no reversal on the policy. And so they all went outside, went to their checkpoints. By this time they started calling around to verify everyone had checked in. The second plane hit, and as a result, there were no employees lost in this particular company. So, good example. Disadvantages is sometimes it's not received well by experienced workers because they don't need to be told what to do. They already know what to do. And some managers have can have a difficult time letting go of traditional decision making as the team is ready to take on the decisions. So then the team starts to resent the process. Last one I want to cover, voting. Sometimes teams vote, and that's okay as long as everyone's committed to do their part. The advantage is it's easy to reach a decision. It's quick. Even small numbers or large numbers is quick. The disadvantage and what you have to really watch out for is you can have the same winners and losers every single time. In other words, the same people dominate every decision. And if this starts to happen, you have to stop voting and use consensus decision making, or you'll alienate the people that lose every time. Now, a couple of tools I want to cover for decision making and harnessing creativity. You avoid putting the team under pressure, and you can celebrate failures, change up the environment. Brainstorming is one we've modeled in class. Anyone can make a suggestion. It's the key is not to criticize any of the suggestions. It's free will. You just toss them out. You've seen me use structured brainstorming where I go around the class to a team at a time and get one idea. Now, if I had more time, I could just keep doing that until we exhausted all the ideas. But certainly in a smaller group, you can do that. Brain writing can be done in a virtual chat room. You could try that. Now that we're working online, ideas are generated anonymously is another way, and usually get more ideas that way. It equalizes the conversation and provides time needed to craft an idea. A couple other tools: you can set up a debate and assign positions to team members, and that way everyone gets to hear all sides of an issue. It can be structured or unstructured, and it honors dissenting voices. Kind of similar is to assign someone the role of devil's advocate, where they raise criticisms to whatever it is you're talking about. I want to quickly go over classical decision making. Assumptions: human beings are rational. Time, opportunity, and comprehension are available, and it's ideal for program decisions. So first thing you do is you review procedures, rules, and policies. So stage one, you generate a problem statement and state it in terms of a gap. So here's where we're at, here's where we want to be, there's a gap. Then you define the decision-making criteria. In other words, identify expectations and boundaries. What criteria are a must, what criteria are just wants. And then generate solutions. You do that through brainstorming. Then you rank the solutions using the criteria, and you come down to the best solution. Another way would bring it down to the best 2 or 3 solutions and then talk it out. And then stage 7, you implement. Stage 8, you evaluate. I want to cover behavioral decision making. Humans are limited by infinite or complex variables, and time and opportunity can be a factor. So if time's a factor, you do what's called satisficing. Pick the first solution that satisfies the basic requirements. And that's often based on decisions we've done in the past in similar circumstances. And usually people with experience will know what they are. A manager could use their intuition, making a decision based upon subconscious perceptions of the situation or patterns of information. And usually this would be where they have experience. One I like is dissolution. Comes from Russell Ackoff's systems decision making. And the story that Ackoff used to like to tell was on a matchbooks, where there was a company that made matchbooks, and people would get a match out, forget to shut the cover, strike the match, light the whole thing, and burn their hand, they'd sue the matchbook company. So the company wanted to reduce the lawsuits, so they asked for ideas to reduce that, and someone came up with the idea, so why don't you print on the matchbook cover, please close cover before striking match. They thought, hey, that's a good idea. They did that. It helped some. It reduced some of the lawsuits, but not all. Some people didn't read the warning, and they still caught the whole matchbook on fire and burnt their hands, sued the company. So finally, as the story goes, a young person came into the company and said, I can fix this problem, but I want to negotiate what the value of it is before I give you a solution. So they did. They sat down and they negotiated the value of the solution if it in fact did fix the problem. Then the person told him, place the strike plate on the back of the matchbook. So they placed this strike plate on the back, and now it didn't matter if the cover was open or closed. You strike the match, it didn't light the matchbook, and it fixed the problem. And so the person got their contract fulfilled. Akoff also talked about the purpose of a system is always derived from the larger containing system. And in order to illustrate this point, he used the steering wheel example. And what it was, he said, the steering wheel of a car is on the right side in England, on the left side in the United States. Why is that? He said, if you brought a car into a room and had engineers take it apart, and you laid the parts all over the room, and you looked at how they fit together and put the car back together, you still would not be able to answer that question. And the reason why is because the answer lies in the purpose of the system, which is derived from the containing system. So he said, if you look at the containing system, which in England is the country of England, that back before they had cars, they had knights on horses. And they would follow wagons or stagecoaches in order to protect cargo and people. They would ride on the left side of the road because they were right-handed and they wanted their sword hand on the wagon side. That way, if they were attacked, they could quickly use their sword hand on the attackers who were coming after the wagon. So when a car came along, they were used to traveling on the left side of the road. They just continued. And in order to drive on the left side of the road, you want the steering wheel on the right. Well, in the United States, there was no tradition like this. So when the car came along, they said, hey, most people are right-handed. We need to free their right hand up so they can operate the accessories on the dashboard. And so in order to do this, they put the steering wheel on the left so they could steer with their left hand and operate accessories with their right hand. And as a result, they needed to drive on the right side of the road. So that's the difference between these two. So I wanted to hit a few of these that we would have illustrated in class had we been meeting. Thanks.